Well, Venus, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Mom Force.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You have a big, beautiful family, mother of 7.
Mother of 7. Sometimes I'll look and I'm like, are all these my kids? It's really it's amazing. It's a lot of work, but it's amazing. So
Well, I have 7 kids too, I have to say, and it's part of what drew me to your story. I think we have a lot of common. And I turned 50 this year, and
I just turned 50.
I know that's what I heard. Please tell me that 50 is the new 40. How is it?
You know, I always say I just want to be the best version of myself every year. So I love it. I feel like I'm 20 still in my mind, and I'm active, I'm healthy, so I love it. What about you?
Well, my husband turned 50 yesterday, and every time someone would say that word 50, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that's old. We're old." But I'm like you, in my mind, I'm still in my 20s. So,
How
but
old are your children?
my oldest is 27. He actually shares a birthday with my husband. He just turned 27, and my youngest is 14. So,
Well,
what are the ages of your children now?
so my oldest graduates dental school Friday. It's exciting. He's 26. I have a 24-year-old who is an accountant.
Mhm.
I have a 22-year-old who's a junior in college. She wants to be an occupational therapist. And I have a 20-year-old who is a sophomore in college, or maybe actually, yeah, sophomore in college, and she wants to go to law school. And I have a 9th grader. She's 14. I have a 12-year-old that's in 5th grade. And then I have a 6-year-old. I had her at 44. So she was
Oh.
not planned, but she's amazing. So yeah, so it's I've got kindergarten to graduating dental school to college to high school to middle school. So I've got kind of every age, and it's crazy fun. Last night I got home from work. I'm grilling hamburgers and hot dogs, and like my 3rd and 4th child have like 10 friends over the pool, and just hanging out. It's just really, it's my greatest, as you know, it's my greatest accomplishment, even though I really can't take credit for them. It's just really the best blessing that I could ever have hoped for. So yeah.
Oh. Well, Venus, you have an incredible story, and I was first aware of your story when it was shared on Humans of New York, and I have since read articles and listened to podcasts you've been on, and I'm so impressed with how you've been able to create this beautiful life that you are so grateful for, when your life wasn't always so dreamy, right? There were a lot of challenges.
Yeah, well, I tell people one of the reasons I share my story is people look at me and they think I've had a silver spoon in my mouth. I drive up in this black Porsche, I'm in a suit, I'm fit. They look at me and they think, gosh, she's had life handed to her. And I share my story because I want people to know it's just the opposite. I've pretty much my whole life just struggled to live, just to survive. And I share my story because I think if people really knew what was behind Venus, then that can help them when we all have adversity and challenges throughout life. And I think sharing my story will help other people get through their own trauma and darkness and see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So
Well, I'm so grateful that you are willing to do that and you see that perspective. But for those of you that don't yet know your story, can you start by telling us a little bit about what your childhood was like, and when did you first become aware that it was different from that of your friends?
I had a very tough childhood, and I have a wonderful mother, but she struggled with addiction her entire life. Prescription drugs, alcohol, you name it, in and out of jail at dark times in her life where she would shoplift, just insurance fraud, just anything to, find a way to satisfy that addiction that she had. And one of my earliest memories I shared with Humans of New York was, as a small child, watching my mother's fingernails, and if they turned blue, to call 911 because that meant she wasn't breathing. And, there's always the story behind everything. She had multiple sclerosis, which she didn't have multiple sclerosis. She was overdosed, or, you know, when we're filing or she's filing false insurance claims, you know, we think people have broken in the house, and I've got these crazy stories I'm telling at school, not realizing that the stories are so crazy that anybody that didn't have a crazy life would see that they're crazy. And I had a light bulb moment as a very small child, probably grammar school, and I was telling the story of my mother, me coming home, and my mother saying we'd been broken into, everything was stolen. And so I was telling my friend this at school, and she says, Venus, have you ever thought, like, you have these really wild stories, like, is this, you know, I mean, is this true? Is this, you know? And I thought, so I had a light bulb moment. I'm like, okay, they're gonna think I'm like a liar, and it was, and I'm crazy, and I'm like, this isn't the way it is for everyone. And so then I started just kind of watching my surroundings, and I didn't really know what I wanted in life, but I saw enough of what I didn't want to take a different path. You know, my brother, we all handle adversity differently. I just remember watching him going to in and out of boys' homes to be sentenced to maximum security prison, just for crazy things. And he's, even as of yesterday, you know, my brother calls me and says, or his wife calls me, they're in Florida now, because he gets fired from his jobs because he steals, and they, you know, they do lots of things they shouldn't do. And you know, his wife's calling me asking me to send them money, and I'm like, no. I said, they're like, we know you're wealthy and you give money to complete strangers and you won't even help your own brother. And I said, you know what? I said, I've given you guys money for years and years, and I'm happy to do that. I said, but what you don't get is by me giving you money, it hurts you. It doesn't help you. And I said, I give money to people that are in really terrible situations due to no fault of their own. They have, you know, they have morals. They have a drive, and they're in terrible situations. I said, I don't help people that don't want to help themselves and are looking for a handout because, you know, this sounds awful, but they're telling me they live in a tent, but they lie so much, you never know what to believe, what not to believe. But he just repeated the pattern, repeated the pattern, repeated the pattern, and still is repeating the pattern. I mean, he's, you know, I'm 50, he's 10 years older than me. And then my sister, you know, the last time I saw my sister, she was in a mental hospital. And I remember visiting her. It was on Bull Street in Columbia, and she was trying to convince me why she worked there. And I knew she's the patient. I had to check in. I've got a little name tag, and she's sitting there telling me she's working there. And so while I didn't know what I wanted or what a real family looked like, other than, you know, I always had a boyfriend, and my boyfriends always had wonderful families that I looked at and kind of watched. I knew what I didn't want, which is I didn't want to do drugs. I didn't want to do alcohol. I didn't want to be what I was witnessing everyone in my life choose. So,
Yeah. So it's interesting, you and your siblings, you know, raised in the same conditions and by the same mother, but with very different outcomes. For me, my relationship with my mom was like fundamental in shaping who I am and what I felt like I was capable of. And I know that, like so many people, you didn't have that kind of relationship with your mom. How did your relationship with your mother impact you, and why do you think it was so different for your siblings?
you know, that's the $1,000,000 question. I think it boils down to just making a choice of who you want to be. And I tell my kids, I said, you're going to become really the 5 people you hang out with. So always choose your friends wisely. Hang out with people that are better than you. And you know, my mom, it's still a struggle. You know, I remember in high school, you know, she came home and she was intoxicated, and I was about to leave for prom. And I just remember her coming in the bathroom and just messing my hair up, you know, right before my date got there, and just told me, you know, that I looked like a SLUT, and that I'd never be as pretty as her. And I just remember like seeing the tears come down my face and just wiping them off, and then just brushing my hair, and hearing the doorbell ring 2 seconds after that, and deciding right there, okay, I can either let this break me, or I can go have a good time. It's my junior, senior prom. And I just decided I'm gonna have a good time. So I left and I had a good time, but I could have easily just cried and just stayed home and missed a beautiful evening. But I just, I just chose to say, okay, this happened and it's not right. It's not fair, but what am I going to do to deal with it? And another time driving down the interstate with my mother, I don't know why she tried to humiliate me. And even if she were trying to humiliate me, but she did, pulling over. I was 15. I was, you got your license back then, and I was driving her. We pulled through Hardee's, and she's like, she takes the keys out, and I'm driving by the window. My daughter's on drugs, call 911. And so, of course, I'm humiliated because everyone believes the mom. They don't believe me. And so I pull over, the cops come, the ambulance, and they're checking me out to make sure I'm, not on drugs and I'm safe, and they can clearly see my mother is. And so by the end of the little investigation, they tell my mom, man, we're gonna have to take you into custody if you don't let your daughter drive, because you cannot drive the car. And so we were driving down the interstate. I'm driving, I didn't say anything. Driving down I wasn't one of these children that talked back and tried to say, look, but I just remember she had this like 20-ounce Coke, and I'm driving, and she throws it in my face, and I'm driving, and I just remember just wiping the Coke, never looking to this, because I wasn't going to let her break me. And I knew that she was under the influence, because when she wasn't under the influence, she was very kind to me. She had lots of beautiful qualities. She still does. As recently, I made her move out a year ago. I have a cottage behind my house, and I had to go to court and evict her. And, everybody, I'm like, people know me in Augusta, and it's humiliating. I'm this real estate Mongol evicting my mother, but what they don't know is, my 20-year-old's calling me from work. Mom, I think Grandma Judy's done it this time. She's not breathing. My housekeeper's calling, she overdosed on prescription medications, again, that are so liberally given by some of these crazy doctors. And, I'll come home and I see my kids, my housekeeper, I'm like, Julia, she's fine. She does this all the time. And Julie's like, no, Mom, really? And then my housekeeper's like, no, Venus, your mom's breathing. And she's like, just very shallow breathing. And so the ambulance drives up, and they're just casually walking to the cottage, because they come there every week. Yeah. So they don't realize that she's really like on the verge of dying here. And so I'm like running out there. My kids are all watching this. I'm running there. I'm like, okay, you got to run like this. She's really not. So then they start running there, and they have to like narc her to get her back breathing, and take her, of course, to the hospital. But at that point I said, okay, like, this is not good. So I evicted my mother, and I still try to be kind to her, but she lives in an apartment complex, and I try to be kind to her, but it's very difficult. But I love her, but you cannot. I had a therapist tell me years and years ago, when I was putting her in a rehab, she says, Venus, you can spend the rest of your life trying to take care of your mother, and you're going to end up in just a very unhappy state, and you're never going to change her. And so I just love her for who she is, and detach myself from her like I've always done, and pray for her, because it's never too late. She's 74 years old, and just take care of my children, and my children have witnessed me still being a good daughter despite her trespassing me. So
well,
that was a long explanation.
Well, these relationships are so complicated and enduring. Like you would think that with a childhood like you had, and the way your mom treated you, you would have the thought, well, I'm not going to have children. Like, it's not worth it. Like, I can't, but you have 7 beautiful children. Did you always know you wanted a big family?
So actually, my husband and I could not have children. And I don't know if you know this, did you, about the donor?
Yes, yes.
So I didn't. I thought I was going to go to law school and I was going to be a career woman. And then once you have fertility issues, uh, for me, it completely changes the way you look at these beautiful souls that God gives you. It's a game changer. And when Tripp and I first got married, we weren't sure, we were told that he could not have children, but when we were confirmed that he couldn't have children, we toyed with adoption, but ultimately decided to do the donor. And so we had the first 6 children with the same donor. And it took, for my first child, it took me 8 inseminations to get pregnant, 4 for my second child, 2 for my third child. And then for my 4th, 5th, and 6th, I got pregnant in the first try. And so once I had my son, my oldest son, who's graduated from dental school, I just remember, because I didn't think we were going to have one. I mean, 8 inseminations, that's a lot. Most people quit before 8 inseminations. And I just remember when I got pregnant and had him, I'm just like, this is why God put me here. I mean, it was just a game changer. My whole life went from being self-centered and focused on, I want to be this ultra successful businesswoman, attorney, to I just want to be a mom. And that's the most important job in the world. And so from there, we had four children in 5 years, and then waited 5 years and had number 5 and 6. And I was, when everything happened, my husband, despite terrible things, he seemed like a good father. One of the reasons I married him is because we would have all of his nieces and nephews' birthday parties at our house. He'd take them on a tractor and ride through the woods, and we'd have, hide and go seek in the dark at our house and have 15 kids spend the night. And it was just, really, it was the happiest time of my life. I remember we lived in a 1-bedroom the first 10 years we were married. And I remember we closed in a porch and put 2 sets of bunk beds. But I remember sitting on our back deck and thinking, this is the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. I'm happy now. I'm very happy. But just that one, probably that's the only one distinct moment in time where I can vividly remember thinking I could have $10 million and nothing compares to having these children and just sitting here and being their mom.
Oh.
And so,
But
yeah.
okay, so I get that. I've got 7 kids, and I know that there's nothing greater than being a mother. But I want to go back to your ex-husband and when you met him, because you went to college, right? And you met
Mhm.
Tripp at college. And as I read about your relationship on Humans of New York, one of the things that you said about him was that he was 90% good and 10% bad. And now we know how your story played out. Um, I have children at this age where they are, starting to get married, and it's exciting and it's wonderful, but it's also so scary. And so, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to fall in love with him, and what you did with that 10% that wasn't so good? Like, how were you able to justify that? And now that your kids are getting older and starting to get married, what advice are you giving them?
Yeah. So, looking back now, I thought it was 90% good and 10% bad, but looking back now, I think my perception was incorrect because of the traumatic childhood I had.
Mm.
And so what I thought was normal behavior as a husband and a wife was not normal. And it wasn't 90% good and 10% bad. Someone recently told me, have you ever heard the analogy of the frog in the water?
Yes.
Yeah, that was me. I was a little frog in the water. It's cold, you're playing around, everything is great. The water gradually starts to heat up and you're still playing around. And then the water starts to boil and you die, and you don't realize that the water is boiling and you're dying. And that was me. The water with my husband gradually heated up, and things started off where I thought were perfect. And it gradually it was only by the grace of God that he didn't kill me.
Yeah.
And when I met Tripp, he was so good looking, so smart, so funny. he could dance. That was always like, if you could dance, that was really just like, I love guys that can dance because most guys can't. But he was so cute. He was, when he walked in the room, like people gravitated to him. I mean, just president of his fraternity, you know, he was just, they called him the killer in college, you know, just fun, like genuine. He made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And, you know, I thought that I had hit the lottery because he adored me. You know, he was, you know, just doting over me, just anything that I wanted, needed. He was just, you know, Prince Charming. And I wasn't the only, you know, a lot of times you know, women say that and everybody else around them can see they're not and they're really a jerks. Well, everybody loved Tripp. You know, everybody did. My own family, they loved him more than they did me. I've got this very straightforward just personality, and I just, you know, I call a cat, a dog, a dog. He was amazing in so many ways. And we had, you know, when we started having our children, he was very hands-on. He coached all the football teams. He coached the basketball teams. He was co-president of the PTO with me. We were, you know, we sat on the front row at church. We went to lunch together every day. There was none of those big signs that you think you should get this big red stop sign. It was the gradual frog that got me in my children. And I just, you know, from the day before we got married, just cussing me out in the car in front of my cousin over me telling him we shouldn't do an open bar because we couldn't afford an open bar, you know, and to, you know, just gradually getting cussed out as a wife to, you know, getting shoved into the bathtub and not being able to walk. And, you know, then him apologizing profusely in front of the children, sitting everybody down. You've got the best mom in the whole world. You know, I just, I'm going to get better. Daddy's sick. To, you know, watching the pressure of the outside world. He was taking over his parents' business, and it just, I thought they were putting too much pressure on him. And I thought that's where his stress and all of this stuff was coming from. I didn't realize, you know, what was really happening. And so we were, you know, he'd shoot a gun and act like he killed himself or try to hang himself. And like, I was really, really religious. And with my faith, you know, faith is a beautiful thing. It's what saved my life, but it also kept me in a bad situation because, you know, I was committed for better or for worse, for sickness and death. And there are some deal breakers. You know, you can't be abused as a woman. And that's what my story, the impact of my story, I want to help other women that, you know, you've got to know your value and your worth and see those big red blocks and leave.
Like, even before you get married, if you're getting cussed out the day before your wedding, that should be a red flag. But maybe you didn't recognize it because of what you do.
I did, but you know, everybody was coming the next day, you know, so how do you know, I've got the dress, I mean, how do you bail out on that? And what I had still was so much better than what I grew up with. You know, it's just hard. I got a Mother's Day card yesterday from him in prison. So I still send him pictures of the children like a couple of times a year. And my friends say to me, you know, how do you do that? And I said, you know, I treat him like he's a human. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just extending the same grace that I would want someone to extend to me if I were mentally ill. Can we read it to you?
Yes. Yeah.
So I got this yesterday. It says, Dear V, thank you for the pictures and updates you sent me for Christmas. It is always the highlight of the year for me to receive them from you. It means the world to me. It actually is my world. I have been trying to write to you before now to say thank you. No excuses. My mental health is just not good, and some things are just extremely hard for me to deal with properly. I think about you all the time, and I pray for your happiness. You deserve to be happy. Please send me more letters and pictures. Tell the kids that I love them so much. I really do hope and pray that you're happy in your life. You're a wonderful mother, and I'm so thankful the kids have you. You are truly the greatest mom I've ever seen. Thank you for those 6 amazing gifts that you and God gave me. I know you're extremely busy and I don't get much rest. I just pray that you will take time to breathe, sorry, and delight in the wonderful world around you that you have had a huge part in creating. Please be happy. Tell the kids I love them so much, and I love you too. Love always, Tripp. It's just
Oh my God.
hard. Yeah,
Yes.
it's hard, you know. So, I mean, we were married 20 years, and he was, you know, really awful to me, but he had lots of good to me, and he recognizes that he's mentally ill, and it's just, that's what makes it all so hard, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I have so many questions, and I recognize he truly does love you and loves the children and loved the family that you had together. Um, let's go back to where you were a young family and this bevy of beautiful kids. One of the things that stood out to me about your Humans of New York story were the photographs of your scrapbooks. And you talked about, you know, scrapbooking all of the things that you did together and taking photos regularly together. And I could see you deliberately like crafting this family story together.
Yes.
Why was that important to you? And how did that prepare you and your children for what was ahead?
So I did that because I wanted I never wanted to forget the joy and the love that these children brought me. And I wanted them to know that they were wanted and loved. And I wanted them to, you know, when you're older, you don't remember your childhood. I wanted them to see like just how important they were and how significant. And I wanted to have these scrapbooks and these memories so they could, when they were 20 and 30 years old, so they could hopefully continue breaking the cycle of a dysfunctional family and seeing what a healthy family looked like. And I made these books reflecting the life that I wanted and I wanted them to have. And of course, the dark moments aren't in there. But it was just so important that I document everything. I remember with my first son, I got books and I found it at his house several months ago. Like I would write in their journals, like what they did every day. You did this, and your dad's so wonderful. We have the best family, and da da da. I think it's so important to, you know, I wanted to take a moment and smell the roses with them and not get so caught up in the busyness. And that was really the only way that I could think of doing it. So I made these, you know, I would scrapbook like when the kids were napping all day, you know, and just, it's just amazing now to go back and have all of those memories to show them. And the kids love them as much as I do. And they're, you know, showing their friends. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, just kind of a little documentary of them growing up. But they, you know, they have books like this. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So
Oh, well, you're such a good mom. I was the same. I loved scrapbooking. For me, it was an important job for me to do in our family. And my mom was a scrapbooker, and I know those scrapbooks were big on helping me, you know who I was and what I was capable of. But, you know, one of the big knocks for social media today is it doesn't represent what everyone's really going through, right? It's just the highlight reel. And I know for sure my scrapbooks were also a highlight reel. And I'm wondering how much of your story in your childhood did you share with your children? And I understand why you wouldn't scrapbook the hard things that your young family was going through, but like I think that you talking about the hard things is important, you know, learning how to spin the lessons that we learn while we go through those things. When your children were young, how did you handle that?
um, you know, we were very, again, we were very religious and we went to church. We went to Bible studies. We had a Bible study that met for 10 years every Wednesday night, where my husband and I would meet with other couples and talk about raising children. And within the family, we just worked and spent time with them. It's the craziest thing. Because all of that was real. That wasn't pretend, but my husband had this separate life, and that's where the darkness was. And looking back now, since this has all come out, what he's done, he had that separate life, the whole marriage. But I didn't know that. And I feel like we did a lot right, but we did a whole lot wrong. And part of the power in my story is I share in that wrong with my children. I'm responsible, just like my ex-husband is. And that's very hard for me to live with. But I accept it. I forgive myself, but I should have left. And I can't use my past as an excuse. I should have left him years before, but I felt trapped. I had 6 kids. I didn't work. I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. I felt like I was unemployable. And so I suffered with the abuse, and I tried to shelter the kids as much as I could. All I did, one of the reasons I'm really successful at real estate is I'm good at calming people down. It can be a whirlwind around me and I can keep everybody calm, because I had to always keep him calm so the children really didn't see that really awful side come out of him cussing me out and yelling and throwing things and punching the walls and driving 100 miles an hour without contacts and just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So,
So you, in a way, had been prepared, in the way that you coped and helped your kids cope with this stress of living with a father with mental illness, for that phone call that eventually came, that was documented in your story on Humans of New York. But can you just tell our listeners who might not know, what was that phone call about, and how did you handle the news in that moment?
well, I didn't believe her really when she called me, because despite the many terrible things I'm telling you that happened within my marriage, I thought he was committed to me, and we shared our faith together. So when I got the phone call, I woke my son up and said, honey, and he was 15 at the time, I need you to listen out for your brothers and sisters, and I got to go meet this person. And so I remember driving to meet her, and the whole time I thought, like, who's this person trying to hurt my family? Like, it never really dawned on me that he had done all the things that she said. I was there. I was going there to take up from him, and she basically said, well, on the initial phone call, I'm calling to say what an awful man you're married to, who's been cheating on you for years, and da 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 da. And so when I got to the hotel, I knocked on the door, and I'll never forget, she's fidgeting and she comes to the door, and she was very small. I said, she's half the size of me and I'm small. And just, I don't know. I look back now, it's the weirdest thing, because I like connected with her, and like, you would think I would hate her and I'd want to just whatever, because she basically just burned my life in 10 seconds. Took it from me thinking, okay, my husband's got some problems that I'm helping him work on, to, okay, this is bad. And but I looked at her and I just saw myself in her. I saw someone who hadn't gotten past their childhood, who had been abused probably their whole life, because women don't just sell their bodies. They don't do that unless something's really traumatic. And she showed me pictures of my husband in compromised positions without clothes on. And so I knew she was telling the truth, and the stuff she was saying. And he, I guess, had gotten aggressive with her and started cussing her out and getting physical with her. And she's like, I ain't putting up with that, And so she just blew the whistle on him, and I'll never forget, as I'm looking at the pictures, he calls and she turns the phone towards me, and I answered the phone, and that's how it all came out. And he's like, I'm like, I can't believe you would ever do this to me and our children. But the prostitutes had pretty much taken everything we had. They'd maxed out our credit cards, or there was no money in the bank accounts. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough to get by. But we were in really, really bad shape.
And your oldest was 15 and you had a nursing baby at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. So when my husband left, I had a 1-year-old to a 15-year-old and no job. And I was in a 2-bedroom. Yeah. It was, and I tell people, you know, looking back, people say, I could never do what you did, Venus. I'm like, well, yeah, you could, because God doesn't give you the grace you need it before you need it. You will have everything you need to get through every possible devastating thing that happens to you in your life when you need it. You won't have it before, but you've got to have faith, and you can't let fear paralyze you, and know that when you need it, as long as you're willing to put in the hard work and forgive other people that hurt you, and you can do it. And that's what my story is about. It's like, this girl that comes from a trailer park family to thinking she's figuring it out, working 2 jobs to put herself through college, to marrying her college sweetheart, to 45 years in prison, to 6 kids, 1 to 15, to nothing, and figuring out how to rise above that. And it was, life is peaks and valleys. And I was, there were some days I just wanted to die. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I did. I got up every morning at 5 o'clock. I ran because I knew that I was so adverse to medicine. I was scared I'd become addicted. So I researched what would help me get out of depression without taking medications. And I wanted to try that first. And I started running 5 miles every morning. And then I would get my 6 kids up, and they hated it. The first year he was in prison, I made them go to mass every morning before school, like 7 a.m. We were the
Every
front
morning, even school day?
every morning. Every morning before school, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then there again Sunday.
Wow.
For 1 year, we did that, and they hated it. And I said to them, I said, you know what? I said, you might not know why you're here, and you might not get anything out of it. You might not feel a thing, but that one day out of 7 or 6, we went, something will click, and you will.
Well, and I've heard you talk about your faith and the role that played, through your childhood and through your life as a mother, and overcoming, all of the obstacles in your life. And I know faith looks different for lots of different people, but it's about a mindset and believing in a story that's bigger than what you find yourself in that moment. We actually got a lot of questions on our Mom Force Facebook group from people that wanted to know more of the details and the nitty-gritty of your story.
Yeah.
One of them that I want to ask you, it's from Kylie, and she says, I'm wondering how Venus has been able to help her children heal from the trials and trauma they've been through. And you mentioned the role of faith in taking them to church, and I know that helped. But what specifically in those early moments did you do to help, besides going to church? And what have you continued to do as a family that has helped you continue to heal together?
So after my husband went to prison, I remember coming home from the courthouse, and I remember sitting all 6 of them in a circle. And I said to them, I was very honest, and I didn't sugarcoat it. And I said to them, I said, I'm scared. I don't know what the future holds, but the first thing we're going to do as a family is we're going to forgive your father, and we're never going to talk bad about him. He's got 45 years to serve in prison, and that is punishment enough, and we're not going to judge him. And I am going to pick myself up. I am your mother, and I am going to take care of you. I don't know what it means. And I was just, my oldest son, Humans of New York, speaks. He says, Mom, you do what you need to do. I'll help you raise my siblings. And we pulled together. And it's, people think it's something big, something magical that you do to save your family. It's really not. It's the little things that make a difference. Yeah. I committed to my kids to working as hard as I could work. I committed to them. We had family dinner every night. And we went and said our good thing and not so good thing with all 6 kids and me sitting at that table. If it was a dang hot dog, they knew I loved them, and I was working crazy hours, like 70+ hours a week, but they knew I was doing it for them. And my commitment first was to them.
Yeah.
Our faith, faith is just a tool. It doesn't matter. I'll have a couple of my children who don't believe in the Catholic faith now. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what you find what you need to give you the strength to be who you want to be. Faith it's just a tool. It's my Catholic faith, Protestant, Jewish, it's all, we're all trying to get to the same place, just to be a better person. And they saw by my example, we had people in the community, I talk about my faith group, we met for 10 years, and three of the four couples that were in it with us never spoke to me again because they found out we used a sperm donor. My husband's in prison, and then I'll lose my church faith.
Wow.
But you know what I would tell my kids? I'd say, listen, it doesn't matter what we know who we are. We know who we are. And you don't listen to what people say about us. We're good people. We did nothing wrong. And we just every day try to give people the benefit of the doubt. We tuned out what people were saying out about us. I still have to tune it out. And just by my example of forgiving their dad was huge. And people ask me, how do you do that for what he did? Well, mental illness is no different than being an alcoholic or having cancer. They're all illnesses. We just don't understand them, and we're quicker to judge when people have those. So if you can just find forgiveness, remove yourself from that situation, you can heal from it.
Yeah. And you set such a great example for your children in the way that you continue to send letters and photos to your ex-husband while he's in jail. I'm
This is 10 years later.
Yeah,
He's been there 10 years, and I'm just like, I was telling a girlfriend of mine, because she was like, you are so crazy. Like, why do you do that? And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am. But it doesn't hurt me to do those things for him. Maybe I'm crazy. But when I look at myself and I treat other people with compassion, then in the back of my mind, when I screw up, because I screw up all the time, I think they give me that same grace. So I think that brings me a lot of happiness. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It's so much about the mindset. And you just, I think as a young girl, decided to, frame in your mind the way you wanted to view the world and your place in it. And that strengthened you all through your life, even to this day, where I know your life is still hard. I mean,
it's still hard.
You have a lot of hard things that you're still dealing with, but your children saw your example. You've taught them from the way that you speak to them, and you've shared your experiences and the way that you live your life. And that, I think, is a huge part on why they seem to be doing so well in light of the hard things that they've been through.
Yes.
Your oldest son, especially, so impressed with him. He is amazing and so strong and has your back and isn't afraid to call you out also when you need it. Sounds like
all of them are like that.
You mentioned that family dinner was really important in sharing your highs and lows, which is something our family does too. You're talking about the good thing and the bad thing that happened that day. Is there anything else that you did as a family that you continue to do now that helps strengthen you together, like traditions or rituals?
I say I work and then I'm home with them, and we hang out, and now they're older. Sometimes you don't see as a mother, in this career that I'm in now, I get accolades. I make a lot of money, and I can feel the reward of my hard work. When you're a mom, you really don't get a paycheck sometimes until 20 years later. And what I would tell moms is you keep every day doing the little stuff right, and you will get just the biggest paycheck 20 years down the road if you have faith and you know that it's coming. For me, that moment was when my son was elected president of his dental class. And, he has to give the opening ceremony talk to the entire faculty, to the students, all the parents, everyone's there. And at the end of it, he says, but I can't end this speech without thanking one person. And of course, everybody's looking, he's like, Mom, would you stand up? And of course, I had no idea what I was going to say. So he says, Mom, when the whole world threw the towel in us and were initially quick to support us or quick to judge us and turn their back on us, you are the reason that I will be Dr. John Morris, by the example that you set for me and my 6 brothers and sisters. It's, that, and what else did he say? He said something to the fact that, I just picked up the cross, and no other single mom could suddenly be a single mom of 6 kids and not miss a sporting event and, come to every whatever. But he just went on. And by the end of it, everybody in the conference room was crying. It was the most beautiful, unrehearsed, unexpected gift I've ever been given. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, every mom feels underappreciated and undervalued at some point. And so, waiting 27 years for that payout, worth it. Another question that we got when I announced that I was going to be interviewing you on my Instagram, someone posted and asked me to ask you if you have any advice for a young mom going through a divorce. I know how old were you when you and Tripp finally separated?
So I think I was 40.
Okay.
I think that's 40. What I would tell the young mom is to be easy on herself. Know that you've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can be a good mom to your children. Meaning you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to exercise. You've got to, you teach people how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. And I would say, it's the little things that make the big difference. It's not the fancy trips. It's not giving them materialistic things. It's just loving them, having that dinner with them, talking to them. It's not brain surgery. It's just genuinely day to day doing the hard stuff and knowing that this is just a phase and it gets so much easier. People used to tell me when my kids were all little, enjoy it because it gets so much harder. Well, they are lying. They are lying, because now my life is so much easier now that my kids are older and they all help out. And but when you've got young kids, you're physically and you're mentally exhausted. And you're afraid to admit that because you feel like you're weak, and you look around and it seems like all your friends are doing it so well, when the reality is everybody's trying to hide that it's just hard. But it's just a blink and you'll be through that. So just commit to taking care of yourself first, putting that oxygen mask on, exercising every day is part of my saving grace. And, having those dinners with your kids.
Well, one of the hardest parts, I think, of going through a divorce as a young mom is then being a single mom and having to provide for your children. What advice do you have for women having to start a career with little ones? And also, what got you into real estate? Like, I remember the part of the story where you had just had your 6th baby and Tripp wanted to know when you were going to get an effing job. And that like took my breath away. Like I had to stop reading at that point, because I remember how vulnerable and overwhelmed I felt after having my 6th baby. But that's when you got your real estate license?
Here's what I would tell people. Don't be afraid of not being successful. It is harder to not be successful than it is to be successful. You can be, when I got into real estate, my divorce attorney said, Venus, you need to get a real job. Everybody, this is the housing crisis. Everybody's getting out of the business. You don't know anyone. In case you've forgotten, you don't get child support from prison, and your family, they live in trailers. You have no connections. And so I just remember, and I said to him, I said, you know what, Tim, you might be right. I might need to get a real job, but I'm going to try first. I'm going to try. You don't know what I got in me. I'm going to try. And I didn't know a soul that would let me list their house. I knocked on doors. My son said, Mom, if you commit to researching for an hour a day, whatever field you're studying, research shows you'll be an expert in 5 years. Well, I wasn't doing 1 hour. I got up. I didn't have enough money I had just a few suits that were cheap suits, but I made them look like $1 million. And I would wash those same things, wear them. I dressed for success. I played the part. when I got a listing or an opportunity, I over delivered. So those people were talking about me who would tell their friends about me. It is so easy to be successful because most people aren't willing to put the extra in. Most people I found in this world that they do the minimum they need to do to keep their job to be successful. Well, if you're hungry and you're willing to work, you can start off working, sweeping floors at McDonald's, to working your way up to a cashier, to working your way up to be a manager, to buying that dang McDonald's when it's all said and done. You can do anything you want to do. Don't ever underestimate the power of a woman and what you can do as a single mom, because I promise you, you can run circles around any man out there that doesn't have the responsibility of all these children if you set your mind to it.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't know how strong you are until you're tested. Moms are strong by nature of who we are and what we've done and what we do day to day. Um, Amazing. Well, Venus, you have been so successful in your career. You have a beautiful, amazing family. Um, Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, one last thing. We talk at Chatbooks a lot about seeing the magic in our everyday life. And sometimes life is crazy, sometimes it's super hard, sometimes it's stressful and messy. But there are always beautiful, magical moments amidst that. Sometimes we just need to have the eyes to see it. So can you share with us a magical moment that you've had with your family recently?
Well, Mother's Day, my kids know that I don't like materialistic things, gifts or whatever. So, I get up, I crawl out of bed, I come in the kitchen, and they've got this beautiful, my daughter is making pancakes for me. My little one's putting fruit in a bowl. My son's slashing avocados to make me avocado toast, and getting me, because they're all broke. Doesn't matter how much money I have, they're still broke, using their money to buy, Food Lion flowers and just their time and their talent and their love for me. And I hear these little whispers. My son's writing me a note saying just how they see how I've sacrificed, I've given my life to make their life better. And those gifts, those things you can't buy, you can't put a price tag on, you can't, no matter how successful I get, nothing will ever compare to having these people love me and me love them back, and all of us knowing that no matter what we do, no matter how bad we screw up, because everybody messes up, that we're going to be there for each other through thick and thin. And that, I tell you, I feel so happy most of the time. I still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I go work out at the gym. I listen to motivational something while I'm there. I come home. I create this atmosphere for my kids. Every morning I play the Lion King soundtrack while I'm putting my 6-year-old in the bathtub, and I'm dancing around the bathroom.
Aw.
And it's just energy. It's just those little things. There's not really one thing. There's so many things that help you.
And that's
And I'll tell you what else with kids, preparing yourself. My daughter had an unplanned pregnancy at 19, and I go to college, and she pees on the stick, and first she's denying it, and then I find out, she's 20 weeks pregnant, and oh my God, it's twins, and she's 19, and so what do you do with that? You celebrate the life and celebrate the fact that she's pro-life. And you celebrate the fact that this is just a little turn in the road. It's not like my son said, Mom, she didn't have cancer, she's not on drugs, and she's not dying, So you celebrate. I could either look at this, oh my God, she just ruined her life, she's 19, she did it. But instead, we pull together as a family. Those twins now are 5. They are the highlight of our life. It's all in the way you look at everything, good and bad.
And that is the message that comes so clearly from you as you share your story. It's about the little things, and it's about how you look at the curveballs that get thrown your way. That you can truly create the life you want despite the inevitable bumps in the road, no matter how big they might be. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Venus, what is next for you? I hear there's a book coming.
Yeah, so William Morris Enterprise, you heard of them?
Yeah.
So they are taking my book, and I'm really excited because the literary agent that's going to promote it has been like, she's amazing. Like, she thinks it'll be a bestseller all over the country.
Yeah.
And so I've had formal offers for TV shows, Netflix, documentaries,
Yeah.
and I've decided to wait on all of that. Number one, all of my children have to be on board, and I've got one of the 7 who is still hesitant, but I think she'll come around. But the book is going to be out in the fall, and I'm sure it'll be hopefully all over the world.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, thank you for being brave enough to share your story. Often we try to hide the messy parts of our life, but we can strengthen each other as we share the good and the bad in our lives. And I know I feel strengthened, and I'm grateful for your example. I've learned so much from you.
Well, good luck with your 7.